Welcome back, writers. Today we're looking at 3 books that will get you writing better fantasy. The books you'll see coming up are fantasy stories that exhibit elements that are key for good fantasy. I've broken them down into 4 areas. They are synergy between story and world, which is how the book blends the often fantastical world with a story rooted in humanity. This is important because fantasy is a genre where the aesthetic can, if writers aren't careful, suffocate the story. The best fantasy stories use the world and story as one. Next up is the use of tropes. This is how the book uses tropes to push the story forward and create something that feels fresh. Tropes are a part of stories. Often writers will use tropes without realizing, or indeed because they feel the genre requires it. But like everything in a story, writers must choose and not presume. Choose the tropes you're going to use because of an effect you wish to create. The third is reflection of real life. This is how well the story holds a mirror up to real life. Picasso said, and excuse the paraphrasing, art is a lie that makes us realize the truth. The best stories always shed light on the human truth. Teaching lessons. Fantasy is a genre, because of its fantastical possibilities, that writers can easily lose sight of showing readers a truth. However, good fantasy, like good art, reflects real life. And the fourth area is the fantastical. This is how writers approach the weird, wonderful, sometimes grand plot elements that fantasy not only allows, but encourages. This is important because it's a facet of fantasy. It's what makes the genre unique. Crime thrillers require crime. That was a mouthful. And fantasy needs fantasy. So using these areas, let's jump into the first book. So book 1 is Perido Street Station, published in 2000 and written by British writer China Miéville. It's the first of 3 books set in the fictional world of Baslag. Now this story firstly captures the fantastical. You have part human, part insect creatures, beings from other dimensions, and huge world-ending threats. A uniqueness, or at least difference, is these elements feel weird and strange. For example, one of the part insect creatures spews mucus from her body to make art. Some have labelled this story under weird fiction, but that's what makes the book stand out. Miéville takes the fantastical and gives it a new slant, a new spin. It's a great reminder for writers to make the most of all your decisions. Yes, you're writing fantasy, but how can you make it your fantasy? How can you breathe life into it? This leads to my next point in tropes. Miéville subverts where he can. This is a story that marks the line between good and evil. There's a lot of grey. And in that grey space, he pulls the reader in and gets them to question right and wrong. All of his inclusions have a purpose. He chooses his tropes because of what he wants to do with them and how he wants them to impact his story and the readers. Then we have how the book blends the aesthetic with the story and the internal journeys. The city where it's set, New Crobuzon, is a living, breathing megacity. Miéville gives descriptions of the world and characters more than most, and not to the point where it's dull. It's never dull. His world building is not static. It's done with the story. There's purpose linked to the narrative. Honestly, the depth of the world is incredible, to the point where people write uni theses on it. But that being said, it never smothers the story. Both are in perfect harmony. Out of all the stories on the list, the world is explored, I'd say, the most. But not because the writer wanted to share an element. It's because the story was better with a particular detail. Lastly, with the morally grey elements that I mentioned earlier, and how Miéville wants audiences to question their values, he holds a mirror to real life. Crime, money, power, love are all explored well. But he does it from grey space, asking if crime can ever be right, for example, and what limits should there be to power. Like everything in this book, Miéville doesn't go over old ground, just trying to create new moments, which is a great lesson for writers. Probably the most known on the list, The Name of the Wind was written by American author Patrick Rothfuss and published in 2007. It's about a young barkeep recounting his life so far, full of pain, adventure, loss, mistakes, and more. Now this book is more traditional in fantasy terms. Medieval setting, magic systems, taverns. It throws its fantasy elements at readers sporadically with a dose of the real, blending the normal with the magical. This makes the fantastical elements stand out when they appear. But rationing the fantastic also serves the plot. Readers are unsure how reliable the narrator is. Is his story true or just another tale? That is a key feature of the reader experience. So Rothfuss uses the fantastical as an extension of the reader's belief regarding the narrator. The book also explores the real-life themes of loss, regret, and hope, using those themes to add human connection to the narrator's story. During the retelling, it's the real-life elements that catch, again showing the importance of presenting relatable experiences, even in a deeply fictional world. Like the other books on this list, and good fantasy in general, this book blends the story and world together wonderfully. There is a spring and colour to Rothfuss's language, his storytelling, which perfectly complements the fantasy world, but he never loses sight of that retelling. It's an accomplishment on Rothfuss's part that he's able to make a story within a story feel so alive and vital. Now, regarding tropes, this story adds real life caveats to things like magic and magical creatures. So, magic in this world is studied at a university and has quite technical components, world away from this kind of magic and just being given to us by the gods or whatnot. There's a fire-breathing dragon in the story too, but we learn that it breathes fire because of something it's mistakenly eaten. Though everyone thinks it's this big dragon, it's actually just a creature of the world that they don't see very clearly. So Rothfuss takes well-known features of fantasy and uses them for his world, subverting them how he wants, showing writers to be bold with these common ideas, control them rather than have them control you. Final book on the list is The Final Empire. It's book 1 of the Mistborn trilogy, written by American Brandon Sanderson and released in 2006. It's a story about a group of thieves who plan to kill a godlike figure who rules their world. It does the fantastical brilliantly. Large stakes, wandering spirits, magic with a great magic system. Out of all the books that I've mentioned, it is the most traditional fantasy, but the fantasy doesn't feel dull or expected. There is enough difference to make it feel fresh and like something new. Sanderson, like the others, uses tropes to his advantage, taking the odd and the familiar, medieval setting, good versus evil, unlikely hero, and using them with enough change to tell his story. He subverts tropes the least of the three, but enough to still excite him. He also uses tropes to reflect on real life. For instance, in the good versus evil battle that runs through the plot, we learn about a wealth of human experiences, from doubt, dealing with loss, and long-term oppression. What Sanderson does slightly different is he looks at societal problems. So he tackles race and slavery and power. Similarly to Perido Street Station, there is a micro focus looking at the characters, and a macro one which looks at society on the whole, showing that fantasy can be a vessel for discussing larger real-world problems. A theme for all these stories is an ability to blend the story with the aesthetic and do it seamlessly. Sanderson has a dense magic system and does use exposition to explain it, but that's needed. And once we understand how the magic works in his world, we're actually pulled in further. It's almost like a trade-off. Yes, you have to sit through a page or two of magic explaining, which is quite dry, to be fair, but what you get is a full understanding of an important piece of the world. With this book, the story and the world go hand in hand. There isn't one without the other. The world is as epic as the story. Thanks for watching. As always, I love to hear your comments. Share the books that you think are good for teaching fantasy. See you in the next video.